So apparently I'm a gold digger. Apparently all I care about is money. And apparently I got rid of 2 of my own children because I'm an evil person. This is all coming from my ex-husband, who by the way decided to ruin my wedding day by showing up uninvited, and you won't believe what he had to say. Hey guys, I'm Lana, currently living in a humble apartment in the heart of Bristol. I was born in a Christian household, and my parents were both professors. I was an only child and was always spoiled. I grew up in a healthy environment and lived a comfortable life. My whole life of love, however, was not that great. All the men I dated always turned out to be the biggest losers. So when I finally met a guy in college, I thought he was the one. Dustin was initially very nice to me, and I had no idea that it was all a facade. And there was a very, very evil face that he was hiding behind. Anyways, he was persistent and continued to court me until I finally agreed to date him. He played the role of a perfect boyfriend. I got swayed into it, and so when he insisted on marrying, even when we were only dating for a few months, I went ahead to blindly agree. My parents were against my marriage, and this resulted in me having a big fight with him. My parents threatened to break ties with me, and at the time I was too reckless to care about it. So I just cut them off and married him. My parents no longer contacted me, and I did not care about it. I was only focused on myself. So Dustin knew that I was no longer supported by my parents. Within just a few days of marriage, his behavior changed 80 degrees. At first, I thought it was not used to this whole new marriage thing and just needed time to adjust, but I was totally wrong since 3 months after our wedding, Dustin proved to be the worst kind of person ever. Well, it all started with me noticing subtle small changes in his attitude. He started to treat me badly. One mistake and he would lose his temper. At first it was only yells, and I tried to ignore it rather than start to behave like he wanted me to. He made me quit my job and actually forced me to stay at home. Yeah, I hated it, although I tried not to make an issue of it. But then he got kicked out and lost his job. It was hard for me to even have a decent meal, and when I pressured Dustin to find a new job, he snapped at me. That was the first time that he hit me. I was shocked. I was actually terrified. I refused to eat or come out of my room for days, until he apologized and I foolishly forgave him. Dustin, however, was insufferable. He had dozens of bad habits. He was short-tempered, an alcoholic, but that was something I was unaware of. I got to know about his addiction when one day he came back home around 2 a.m. He was stumbling and pretty drunk. I tried to confront him about it, but this resulted in him yelling at me and calling me all sorts of bad names. His voice was loud, and I feared that our neighbors would call the cops on us, so I just shut my mouth and let him do whatever he wanted. The next day, when I tried to reason with him that it was not a good thing, he again threatened to hit me if I did not keep my mouth shut. At that point, I wanted to just leave him, but then I got pregnant. I had no idea that I was expecting, and even when I started getting sick, Dustin never took me to the doctor. I had done the pregnancy test at home and confirmed it, so the baby was another reason for me to stay with him. When I told Dustin about the pregnancy, I expected him to be happy, but he got all angry that they were already struggling with money and now we would have another mouth to feed on top. This broke my heart, but then miraculously, Dustin got another job. I was ecstatic to hear it, and then I thought that Dustin's behavior would change now, but I was completely wrong again. At first, Dustin faked to be happy about it, and I had no idea that he actually hated it. When I was 5 months pregnant, I heard him. It was nighttime, and I woke up feeling thirsty, so I walked downstairs towards the kitchen and heard him talking to a friend. He was probably drunk considering his aggressive tone, flushed face, and slurred speech. He was calling me a pathetic woman and complaining about me bringing more trouble to him with our baby. It was definitely shocking, to say the least, for me, so I went to him and started shouting at him. Dustin, however, was angry and yelled at me to get out of his face. After that fight, I packed my bags and decided to leave. I had nowhere to go, and my parents were still not talking to me. I knew that they would probably forgive me, but my guilt did not allow me to face them. Dustin knew that I was not going to compromise when it came to the baby, so he played another trick and I fell for it. He came to me and started to apologize and blamed his drunk self. He convinced me that it was not because of, well, me, but it was the workload that he was just not in his right senses. I trusted him again, but still nothing changed. He would come home late and never accompany me to the doctor. I had to do all that alone, and he made me believe it's because he was busy working hard for us, but it was all a lie, and he would be actually busy clubbing with his friends all night long. I got to know about it much later. I was extremely sad at the time, and one day called my parents. I did not tell them anything about my misery, but rather informed them about my pregnancy, and that was enough for them to forget everything and forgive me. I met them and just kept the details of my relationship with Dustin to myself. My parents were happy, and I did not have the heart to tell them the truth. So again, I kept my mouth shut and continued to live quietly, not complaining at all. I told Dustin about my patch-up with my parents, and he was strangely happy about it. I had no idea why he was behaving so peculiar, but my questions were answered when we got invited to dinner with my parents. Dustin was in a very good mood when we went there. My parents were not hostile at all. They welcomed us warmly and did not bother Dustin by asking him any personal questions. Everything was going well, but that was until Dustin took me to the side and told me to ask my parents for some money. Well, I was furious to hear that, and immediately refused to do so, and this made him angry. He starts arguing with me, and just to make sure my parents would not get to know anything about it, I told them that we would leave because I wasn't feeling well. They were worried, but my excuse worked, and I followed Dustin outside. He didn't bother hiding how mad he was and stormed towards the car. I told my parents that he was just worried, and fortunately they did not ask for anything. I sat in the car, and just as we got a bit away from my parents' house, Dustin again started the argument. He starts cursing, and I was getting nervous with each passing second. I told him to slow his roll, but he didn't care. He exceeded the speed limit, and the car got out of control. I was crying, and Dustin was simply yelling at me. And then I felt an impact, bodies jerking forward as our car hit a tree. I could not remember anything else except loud noises and screaming along with sirens before I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and that was the worst day of my life. I lost my baby. I was devastated after my miscarriage, but then Dustin had also sustained injuries, and he again used that to guilt trip me. He apologized to me again and again, even when he was on the hospital bed, and I thought that he would also never intentionally hurt our baby. So I could not really blame him. After that heartbreaking incident, Dustin started acting nice to me. I had no idea that it was another manipulation tactic of his. He starts taking care of me, and I thought that the loss of our child might have changed him, but my fantasies were again destroyed just a few months later. So, what happened was that after the first miscarriage, Dustin started taking care of me, and this pretense of his continued for months. I was also trying not to be too sensitive about things and just ignore him most of the time if he did something wrong. And then the unexpected news came. I was pregnant. Again. Well, this time Dustin did not act like he hated it, rather he celebrated it. I was a little confused with his behavior, but I just considered it a good thing. However, I had no idea that the only reason why Dustin was doing it was because after the baby he wanted to just control me by threatening to take him away from me if I did not obey him. But again, I had no idea about it. This was revealed to me when we had the fight, which actually destroyed everything. It was a Friday night, and I had been feeling a little down. I was hungry, and there wasn't much food that I could eat, and that was all because Dustin forgot to do groceries. When I asked him if I could go instead, he refused, making an excuse that I should not tire myself out. It's been like that for some time. He has been forgetting to buy me clothes or food, and I don't know, I just noted that the time we waited for him to come back. Hours would pass, and he still wasn't home. So I tried calling him, but Dustin ignored all of my phone calls. I kept waiting for him. It was around 4 a.m. when he stumbled inside the house. I was mad, but that triggered me even more was his drunken state. I looked at him happily singing songs and mumbling things to himself. When he came upstairs, I confronted him, and that was another mistake of mine, as it later proved to be deadly. When Dustin's eyes fell on me, I saw how his mood soured. Before I could even say anything, he marched towards me and slapped me across the face. I was too shocked to even react. The impact of his hit made my head snap to the side, and I had tears pulling up in my ears and eyes, and By this time I refused to back up, so I yelled at him, and this made him even more furious. Our argument got bigger, and he got more excessive. I tried to push him away to go downstairs, but he was still trying to give up, and then suddenly my foot slipped as he pushed me and I came crashing down the stairs. I let a horrified scream out and felt blood trickling down my body. That was the second time I had a miscarriage, all because of that sick man. I don't remember who took me to the hospital, but our neighbors gathered at our house, hearing my screams. They called the cops too, and they took Dustin to the police station while I was at the hospital. He got fined and was sentenced to some jail time, and I got a restraining order against him, and I did not see his face after that. Update number 1. Hey guys, I'm back with yet another update. Well, first of all, let me tell you about my life after the miscarriages. I actually moved back in with my parents. They didn't say anything and only took care of me, but I still felt bad about depending on them and adding to their headache. I consulted a lawyer and filed for a divorce. While things were getting finalized, I started looking for a job. I wanted to get back on my feet ASAP, and just when my divorce happened, I found a new job. I wanted to move on and forget my terrifying past, but I knew it was not easy. Just 2 months before it all passed, I started looking for a place to go, and that's when my parents stepped forward again. They lent me some money, and because of them, I was able to buy a small apartment near my workplace. Time passed by, and I started adjusting to my new life. My new job was going great, and some time passed and Dustin was out again. And although Dustin showed up at my parents' house twice and caused quite a scene, they never gave him my address. Just like that, one day he again showed up at my mother's place and started breaking stuff. They had to call the police on him to get rid of him, but thankfully I never saw him again. Anyways, at my workplace I met a man. Niall was a very kind and empathetic man. He initially was appointed as my supervisor, and that's how we got close. We became friends, and that's when I revealed the truth about my life to him. Although I expected a negative reaction from him, he was strangely supportive and never judged me. After that, something changed between us and he confessed to me. It was an unexpected twist, and I had tons of doubts, but because of his sincerity, we started to date. Niall was everything I could ask for in a partner. Although I was apprehensive at first because of my past experience, he turns out to be completely opposite. As time passed, our relationship grew strong, and finally the day came when he proposed. I could not believe it. This time I involved my parents, and Niall had to even get their approval. It was cute. I had no idea that my life would change so drastically and get so better, but of course, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshines, as other challenges was yet to come. Update number 2. So let me tell you my real villain. The real villain I had to face before my wedding, and it's actually Niall's mom, Nora. Yeah, I know. My first impression of her was a little mixed. I could not pinpoint what kind of woman she was. She wasn't hostile towards me, but she had a certain edge of her personality, but still she was not as bad with me. Maybe it's because of Niall, but anyways, it's good for me, so I didn't bother thinking much about it. After a few weeks of meeting her, she invited us out to dinner. Niall and I went there, and I was excited about it, but I had no idea how bad things were about to turn out. At first she treated me nicely and always asked, and if I was in a very good mood. We talked about our wedding, and we informed her of the wedding date, and it was just a few weeks away. Nora was happy that the wedding date was close, and Niall got a call that he went out to take. I was left alone with Nora, and I started telling her about my parents and workplace, and then suddenly she asked me about something she heard a rumor, as she claimed. I knew what was coming next, but I told Niall everything about me, so I literally had nothing to hide. I told her that it was true. I was married, I was divorced, and I could see Nora's expression changed. I knew what was coming, and then I revealed the truth about my miscarriages, and that's when all hell broke loose. I saw her face contort and twist into an ugly smirk. She then showed her true colors. She started taunting me, and I was stupefied by how fast her attitude changed. After that, she started getting more and more harsh towards me. I didn't tell Niall about anything, and that's when I got to know what kind of person Nora actually was. She was a very proud, egotistical woman. Whenever she met me, she made sure to act like that, and then finally she confronted Niall. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I heard them arguing. Nora actually visited Niall, and coincidentally, I was there too. Seeing me, she took her son to another room. I didn't realize what was happening, that I was eavesdropping on them, but you know what? I could not help but listen to her telling him not to marry me. Because, well, I've had a miscarriage. I was devastated to hear it, and I wanted to barge into their house and teach her a good lesson, but then my insecurities did not allow me to say a word. After she left, Niall acted like nothing happened, so I also did not bring it up. Nora, however, was not subtle about her hatred. Our wedding preparation started, and Nora volunteered to help. I was obviously suspicious, but I let it happen. But of course, she did what she intended to do. She ruined my wedding dress by giving the wrong measurements. She offered that her friend was a designer and that she could help me with that. I was upset about it, but Niall then introduced me to another designer who was his former classmate, and so I was able just to order a new dress. But this only motivated Nora to create even more issues to somehow cancel our wedding. And that's when she did something unexpected, which I could have never ever thought that she could do. Update number 3. Hey guys, so let me update you on what happened next. My wedding date was just a few days away, and Nora somehow managed to contact Dustin. We all had no idea about her evil plan, and she was very quiet, and we never knew it was actually the calm before the storm. So everything went well regardless of her tactics to ruin my wedding, and finally the wedding day came. I was over the moon with happiness as I welcomed my guest, and Niall was equally happy and everything was going according to plan. And then the time to exchange vows came. We both were getting ready to say our vows when somebody interrupted us. My eyes widened, looking at my ex-husband standing a few meters away from us. I was confused and surprised at the same time, and terrified, having no idea why Dustin was even here. And then, of course, Dustin was the one who announced the purpose of his visit. He suddenly walked in front of everyone and took the microphone. Dustin went ahead to introduce himself. And then, without delaying any longer, he just cut to the chase and started telling everybody that I was a woman who was not capable of love. I was actually a gold digger, and that's why I married him, and now I'm marrying Niall, and I've divorced him when he lost his job. Not only that, he said that I actually got rid of my own children. Everybody gasped in shock. I looked at my side, and I could see Niall's face painted with doubt. Before I could defend myself or say anything, Nora immediately interrupted me and started telling everyone that she actually wanted her son to not marry me, as I revealed my true intentions to her, and even challenged her that she would never be able to blow up my cover. I was stupefied by her lies. I stepped forward and immediately denied everything. But Dustin was still not done, and he starts calling me names, right in front of everyone, and starts calling me a materialistic woman. My parents were so mad after witnessing the scene and called the security. Dustin was dragged away by them, and now I'm standing there with tears in my eyes as I saw Nora murmuring things to Niall, who seemed conflicted. I was hoping that he would shut her up like every other time. However, my heart dropped when Niall announced that the wedding was postponed as he stormed away. I was crying by now, and my parents were on my side trying to soothe me, but I was relieved that he actually did not say cancel the wedding, he just said postpone it. We went home, and I knew I had to talk to Niall, and I was hopeful that he would listen. But I kept my hopes low, and did not expect much after what happened, but then another surprise awaited me. Final update. Well, hey guys, this is it. So, what happened after my wedding postponement was that Niall agreed to have a conversation with me, but something happened and I got the biggest shock of my life. So, I actually went to his home and Nora was there. However, she had no idea that I was visiting Niall, so when I went there, I saw Nora busy talking to someone on her phone. I was going to ignore her, but something in me just told me to stay and listen to what was happening. I did. Nora was talking to a man whom she paid a visit at our wedding. This was more than enough for me to guess who this man was, and anger started bubbling in my head. I took out my phone and started recording her conversation. She could be heard saying Dustin's name later on and telling him that he would get his money soon for ruining the wedding. I had enough evidence, and after that I just went straight to Niall. I could see he was angry and anxious at the same time, and I calmly approached him. Told him about his mom. At first he was apprehensive and said that I was accusing his own mom. But then I gave him the evidence and there's no room for discussion. Niall apologized to me even when he shouldn't had, as it was his mother's fault, not his. Niall suggested that in order to make this mother of his realize her mistake, he was going to have to help expose her. So we started pondering about what we should do, and then an idea suddenly popped up into my mind. I told Niall that his mother gave money to Dustin and there was the reason why he played the game. So we could just reverse the rule and give money to Dustin to make him expose her. It was a brilliant idea. And even if it was his own mother, Niall knew that she did something horrible and she needed to be taught a lesson. So we contacted Dustin, and Niall now was the one who talked to him. He told Dustin that, Dustin apologized to him, and he revealed that he was in dire need of money and was so desperate, so that's why he agreed. I didn't forgive him because he had done worse to me, but I knew that he was punished for that. And right now my focus was Nora. So we just quietly agreed to give him more money if he agreed to expose her. Niall and I again announced our wedding, and this came as a shock for Nora. We didn't say anything about our patch-up and just said that we wanted to put things in the past and just move forward. She was obviously distressed, and that was a source of pleasure for me. Again, just like deja vu, the wedding day came, and we're again standing and exchanging our vows. But this time we completed it, and after that, Dustin stepped forward. We could see how color drained from Nora's face as she watched him. Dustin, first of all, apologized to everyone for what he did last time. Everyone was confused about why he was apologizing out of nowhere. So that's when he revealed why he did it. He said that Nora was paying him money to say all those horrible things about him so that her son would not marry a used woman. Everybody was shocked to learn the truth and was cursing at Nora. That's when her boss stepped out of the crowd and called her out for her nasty actions and told her that he was straight up kicking her out. I was speechless at how fast karma was hitting her, and Niall was quiet throughout the entire fiasco. Nora was busy yelling at me, cursing me, still not learning her lesson, so her sister Niall's aunt was the one who shut her up. She was crying as she revealed that she was disappointed in her sister, who had actually forgotten that she herself had a miscarriage before she had Niall. Nora was humiliated right there and silenced by her own sister. Nobody in the hall dared to speak up after hearing the truth. Niall finally spoke up and announced that after our marriage we were going to move away to a different town, and he was going to cut all ties with his mom. He said it in front of everyone. This was enough to alert Nora, who starts yelling like a madwoman and attacked Dustin. We watched on with horror as she picked up a glass bottle and smacked it across his head. Screams were heard. She was in a feral state. It was Niall who called the cops, and just a few minutes later, she was arrested. After that crazy day, Niall and I never saw her again. Dustin was taken to the hospital, but it was none of our concern. She was fined heavily, and Niall was adamant to not see her again. Because of her own bad actions, she got what she deserved, and while my husband and I focused on our lives and started living together, we started the new journey together. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I was not a Dustin fan. He was a jerk, manipulative, evil, abusive, toxic. You can just keep naming stuff about him, and you're probably correct. But I will say, this was one of the first times we've had a story with an evil, abusive ex and an evil, abusive mother-in-law all wrapped into one. The only good thing I can possibly say about Dustin is the fact that he had the nerve and the audacity to come back and go ahead and expose what he did to everyone. He said, yeah, I made up everything just for a little bit of cash, just because the mother-in-law of the story doesn't want her precious baby boy to get married to OP. So at least he does have something to cover his butt for all the bad stuff he did by making it right, even though he was just doing it for money. I still want to know your thoughts, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day, and if you guys want more daily stories, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow, and of course remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.